The lobby of the Meridian Group smelled like ozone and expensive coffee. Elias stood quietly near the freight elevator. He held a thermal transport bag containing 6 imported koi. His work boots left faint, damp prints on the Italian marble. No one paid attention to the guy delivering fish. Across the sprawling atrium, a group of men in sharp suits hovered over a massive architectural model. It was a coastal resort project, glass and white steel, cutting into a pristine bay. A woman stood at the center of the chaos. She was pressing 2 fingers to her temples. This was Clara Vance. She was the CEO of Meridian. And right now, she was watching her flagship project slowly bleed to death. The city council denied the permit again, she said. Her voice carried across the empty lobby. They said the artificial lagoon's drainage will suffocate the natural coral reef. A senior engineer adjusted his tie. We can build a secondary seawall, Miss Vance. That takes 6 months and another $10 million. Clara snapped. We have 3 weeks before the board pulls the plug. Elias shifted the weight of the water bag. He looked at the 3D model from 30 feet away. He didn't need to step closer. He could see the flaw from here. The primary intake valve was angled at 45 degrees against the tidal pull. It was fighting the ocean. Instead of breathing with it, it would create a backwash of silt right onto the reef. Elias knew this, because 4 years ago, he was the one who wrote the textbook on tidal architecture. Before he walked away, before he traded drafting tables for mud and fish food, he delivered the koi to the lobby pond, signed the invoice, and walked out. He didn't say a word. By 6 that evening, Elias was back at his farm in the valley. The air smelled of damp earth and pine. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was sitting at the kitchen table. She was using a green crayon to color a drawing of a turtle. Elias set a plate of grilled cheese in front of her. How was school, kiddo? He asked. Good, Lily said without looking up. Tommy said my turtle looks like a rock. Elias sat down across from her. Turtles are just rocks that know how to swim. Lily giggled. Elias looked at her drawing. She had drawn a little river, flowing backward into a lake. He reached out and gently turned the paper. Water always finds the easiest way down, he said softly. He hadn't drawn a blueprint in 4 years. The last time he did, a developer cut corners on his materials. A retaining wall collapsed. A wetland was destroyed. Elias took the blame, packed his bags, and disappeared. He told himself he was done building things for a world that only cared about profit. But 2 days later, the filtration system in the Meridian lobby broke down. Elias got the emergency call at dawn. When he arrived, the lobby was empty except for Clara. She was sitting on the edge of the indoor pond. Her heels were off. She looked exhausted. She had a stack of blueprints spread out on the marble floor. Elias set his toolbox down. Filter pump is jammed, he said. Clara barely looked up. Just fix it before the board members get here at 9. Elias rolled up his sleeves and reached into the cold water. He cleared the impeller in 5 minutes. The water started flowing clear again. He packed his tools and stood up. He accidentally stepped on the edge of one of her blueprints. It was the schematic for the coastal resort's water system. He looked down at it. He tried to look away. He really did, but the math was screaming at him. Your engineers are looking at the wrong variable, Elias said. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Clara froze. She slowly looked up at him. Excuse me? Elias pointed a wet finger at a cluster of lines on the paper. They're trying to force the water through a mechanical filter. The tide at that bay shifts every 6 hours. If you curve the intake channel by 12 degrees, the ocean will flush the lagoon naturally. No seawall needed. No silt on the reef. Clara stared at him. Then she looked down at the blueprint. She traced the line he had pointed to. Who are you? She asked. I'm the guy who fixes your fish pond, Elias said. He picked up his toolbox. Have a good day, Miss Vance. He walked toward the glass doors. He didn't look back. Upstairs in the boardroom, Clara's chief engineer threw his pen on the table. A 12-degree curve? The engineer scoffed. Who told you that? Some guy in a flannel shirt? Clara stood at the window. Run the simulation, she ordered. Miss Vance, it's a waste of time. Run it, she repeated. The room fell silent. The engineer typed the parameters into the modeling software. The screen flashed. The red warning zones around the coral reef turned green. The water flow efficiency jumped by 40%. The estimated cost dropped by $8 million. The engineer stared at the screen. His mouth was slightly open. How did he know that? The engineer whispered. Clara didn't answer. She was already walking out the door. She drove out to the valley that afternoon. She didn't call ahead. She found Elias standing waist-deep in a holding pond. He was wearing waders and holding a net. Lily was sitting on the dock, tossing pellets into the water. Clara walked up to the edge of the pond. The simulation worked, she said. Elias didn't look up. Good for you. I fired my chief engineer this morning, Clara said. Elias stopped moving. He leaned on the net. Sounds like a personal problem. Clara crossed her arms. I need a new lead architect. I can offer you double whatever you make selling fish. Elias waded toward the dock. He climbed out and took off his gloves. I don't build anymore. Why not? Because people like you only care about the bottom line. You don't care about the water. You just care about the permit. Clara looked at him for a long time. The wind rustled through the pine trees. You're right, she said quietly. I cared about the permit. Because if this project fails, my board will sell the company to a conglomerate, and they will pave over that entire bay. They won't even try to save the reef. Elias looked at the water. He knew the conglomerate she was talking about. It was the same one that had ruined his last project. Lily tugged on Elias's sleeve. Dad, is she mad at us? Clara crouched down to Lily's eye level. No, sweetie. I'm just asking your dad for help. He's very good at fixing things. Lily nodded seriously. He fixes everything. Elias looked at his daughter. Then he looked at Clara. I don't wear suits, Elias said. Clara stood up. I don't care if you wear a trash bag. Just fix my bay. Monday morning. Elias walked into the Meridian Tower. He didn't wear a suit. He wore his usual canvas jacket and work boots. The executive team stared at him like he was a stray dog. Clara didn't care. She cleared out the main conference room and gave him a drafting table for 3 days. Elias didn't leave the room. He didn't use the modeling software. He used pencils, tracing paper, and an old slide rule. And of Capra's tracing, he redrew the entire water intake system. He mapped out a natural filtration basin using local mangroves. It was brilliant. It was also cheap, but not everyone was happy. Marcus Vance, Clara's uncle and the majority shareholder, walked into the room on Thursday. He looked at the hand-drawn blueprints and sneered. This is a joke, Marcus said. We are a billion-dollar company, and you have a fish farmer drawing our flagship project with a pencil. Clara stood between them. His design solves the silt problem. Marcus, the city will approve it. Marcus shook his head. The city won't approve anything drawn by a ghost. He threw a thick folder onto the drafting table. It landed right on top of Elias's sketches. I ran a background check, Marcus said. Elias Thorne, the architect behind the Silver Creek disaster. Clara looked at Elias. Elias didn't flinch. He kept his eyes on the blueprint. A retaining wall collapsed. Marcus said to the room. A whole wetland was wiped out. And now you want to hand him a coastal reef? The board is voting tomorrow, Clara. I'm moving to accept the buyout from the Apex conglomerate. At least they know how to pour concrete. Marcus turned and walked out. The room was dead quiet. Clara looked at the folder. Then she looked at Elias. Is it true? She asked softly. Elias set his pencil down. Yes, he said. I designed Silver Creek, and the wall collapsed. He didn't offer an excuse. He didn't say it wasn't his fault. He just started rolling up his blueprints. What are you doing? Clara asked. I'm saving you the trouble, Elias said. If my name is on this, they'll never approve it. He picked up his jacket. The math is sound, Clara. Give it to another architect. Let them take the credit. He walked out of the building. That night, Elias sat on his porch. The koi ponds were quiet in the dark. Lily came out in her pajamas and sat next to him. She leaned her head on his arm. Did you fix the ladies' bay? She asked. Elias looked at the water. I tried, kiddo, Sometimes things are just too broken. Lily frowned. You always say water finds a way. Elias closed his eyes. He had spent 4 years hiding from his own failure. He had let the people who ruined his design walk away clean. He stood up. He went into his garage and unlocked an old metal filing cabinet. He hadn't opened it in 4 years. He pulled out a heavy cardboard box. Inside were the original material logs from Silver Creek. The next morning, the Meridian boardroom was packed. Marcus stood at the head of the table. He was holding a shiny presentation folder. The Apex conglomerate is offering 80 cents on the dollar, Marcus said. It's a loss, but it saves the company. We signed the papers today. The board members murmured in agreement. Clara sat at the far end, looking defeated. The heavy oak doors opened. Elias walked in. He was carrying a cardboard box. Marcus stopped talking. Security. Marcus barked. Get him out of here. Elias didn't stop. He walked straight to the mahogany table and dumped the box. Hundreds of old invoices and material manifests spilled across the polished wood. 4 years ago, the Silver Creek retaining wall collapsed, Elias said. His voice was low, but it carried to every corner of the room. The media blamed the architect, but the blueprints called for high-tensile steel rebar. Elias picked up a piece of paper and slid it down the table. The developer swapped it for low-grade iron to save $2 million. The iron rusted. The concrete snapped, and the wetland died. Marcus crossed his arms. That's a tragic story, he sneered. But what does that have to do with us? Elias looked right at him. Look at the signature on the work order, Marcus. Clara picked up the paper. She read the name aloud. Apex conglomerate. The room went dead silent. Elias leaned over the table. Apex ruined Silver Creek, and now they want to buy your bay. Why do you think they want it so badly? Clara's eyes widened. She pulled up the coastal survey on her tablet. The limestone, she whispered. The reef sits on a massive deposit of industrial limestone. They don't want to build a resort. They want to dredge the bay. Marcus's face turned pale. That's a lie, he stammered. Clara looked at her uncle. Her eyes were ice cold. How much were they paying you to push this through, Marcus? Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was enough. An hour later, Marcus was escorted out of the building. The board unanimously rejected the Apex buyout. They submitted Elias's handwritten blueprints to the city council. 3 weeks later, the permit was approved. 6 months later, the Meridian Eco Resort broke ground. There was no seawall. The ocean flowed naturally through a beautiful, curved channel. The reef was safe. Clara stood on the viewing deck, watching the construction. She was wearing a hard hat and a sharp suit. Elias stood next to her. He was still wearing his flannel shirt. The board wants to offer you the VP of Design position, Clara said. Corner office. Company car. Elias watched the tide roll in. I already have a job, he said. Clara smiled. She didn't push him. She just nodded. Can you at least come by on Tuesdays? She asked. The lobby pond keeps getting jammed. Elias looked at her. He smiled. Just a little. I'll see what I can do. That weekend, the farm was quiet. Lily was sitting on the dock, feeding the koi. Clara pulled up in her SUV. She wasn't wearing a suit. She was wearing jeans and a pair of old sneakers. She walked down to the dock and sat next to Lily. Elias watched them from the porch. He realized something. He hadn't drawn a perfect line in 4 years. But sometimes, the most beautiful things in life aren't drawn on paper. They are built from the pieces we thought were broken. What would you do if the world blamed you for a disaster you didn't cause? Would you hide, or would you find a way to rebuild? Let us know in the comments below.